Hi, Longheads. We know you're listening. This is Brothers of the Serpent podcast.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, angels and demons and monsters and serpents, to Brothers of the Serpent podcast, coming to you not live from the 10 by 10 by 10 tangent cube of science, nestled amongst the dusty bones of an ancient seabed high atop the Edwards Plateau, which is being in the process of being flooded.
Yeah.
Turning it back into a sea.
Bring it on.
Soon we'll just be a collection of islands.
That would be awesome.
Yeah, that would be cool. So we got a great episode for you today. Going to be about a whole bunch of... I've been doing all this research on the what's called the fairy faith in Celtic countries. It's a massive book that was written in the 1900s. But first, as always, we are joined by our good friend and longhead, Mr. Brett England, from deep beneath his secret space station out in outer space. How you doing, buddy?
Doing well, man. I'm super excited for this show. It's something that I know just enough about to be interested, but not really enough to claim that I know anything about it. I'm super stoked.
The fairy faith stuff?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It is a fascinating subject that touches on many of the topics that we talk about on this show.
The Fae book.
Yeah, the Fae. Wait till you guys get a load of my terrible accents I'm going to throw in when I'm reading these stories. But first, as always, we have space weather news. Arctic auroras. Dang. Yeah, you didn't have this. You didn't do the music.
I was sitting in here,
not doing anything,
thinking about there was something I was supposed to do, and I was like, I don't know what it is, so I will just sit here and think about what I was supposed to do.
Arctic aurora is likely this week. An irregular hole in the sun's atmosphere is spewing a stream of solar wind towards Earth. Estimated time of arrival, October 24th. High-latitude skywatchers should be alert for auroras when the gaseous material arrives. A bright full moon on October 24th will add its luminosity to that of the geomagnetic storm, creating some nice landscape photo ops around the Arctic Circle. If we have any listeners in the Arctic Circle, just pay attention. Beware. Also, something wicked green this way comes. A green ball of gas wider than the planet Jupiter is approaching Earth. Its name is Comet 46P/Witarnen. Italian astronomer Rolando Ligustri photographed the verdant orb on October 18th using a remote-controlled telescope in Australia. What? An Italian using a remote-controlled telescope in Australia. Deep inside that green ball is a furiously vaporizing nugget of dirty ice. The frozen nucleus of 46P/Witarnen is only about 1 kilometer wide, but astronomers say it is, quote, hyperactive, unquote, like a little kid.
So there's no way to tell. There's no way to tell which direction it's going to be going.
Yeah, as many as 1.7 times 10 to the 28th of water molecules per second have been observed emerging from the comet's core. Just in case, for those of you in real India, that's a lot. Mixed with the water vapor is a diatomic carbon, C2, a gaseous substance common in comet atmospheres that glows green in the near vacuum of space. On December 16th, this hyperactive comet will come within 11.5 million kilometers of Earth, making one of the 10 closest approaching comets of the space age. This comet will probably become a naked eye object for several weeks during the holidays, prompting some astronomers to call it the Comet of the Year. Comet Witarnen passes through the inner solar system every 5.4 years. Right now, it is near the orbit of Mars, and it is heading in our direction. Forecasters expect it to brighten more than 200-fold between now and mid-December, eventually reaching magnitude +3, similar to the stars of the Pleiades. Stay tuned.
Dude, that's awesome.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yes.
I always get excited for these comet predictions, and then they just never pan out. At least they haven't in the past decade.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like every comet that was supposed to be amazing in the past 10, 15 years has just not been. Oh. Like, you haven't been able to see it without a telescope.
I want to see the serpent in the sky.
Yeah, for sure.
Come on. Snakes.
All right.
Sky snakes.
Sky snakes. Yeah, so that will be this Christmas season. That's what they're talking about, the Christmas New Year's season. So should be interesting to see if we have a big giant green snake in the sky.
That's awesome.
Which, of course, means, as we all know, that we're all going to die.
Yeah. Of
course. The Watcher says that we three wise men shall follow it. Straight to pyramids.
Yeah.
All right, what do you got?
I I got a couple stories here. The world's oldest intact shipwreck discovered in the Black Sea.
Okay, so where's the Black Sea? I'm terrible at geography.
The Black Sea is
Like
next to
Mediterranean-ish?
Romania, Bulgaria, Greece, Turkey. It's north of Turkey.
Oh, okay.
Just north of Turkey.
The Watcher's looking for it. Go ahead and read the story.
The wreck is to the east of Bulgaria
Okay.
and north of Turkey. So, all right, well, I'll just read the story then. Archaeologists have found what they believe to be the world's oldest intact shipwreck at the bottom of the Black Sea, where it appears to have laid undisturbed for more than 2,400 years.
Wow.
The 75-foot vessel, thought to be an ancient Greek, was discovered with its mast, rudders, and rowing benches all present and correct, just over a mile below the surface. A lack of oxygen at that depth preserved it, researchers said. So that's pretty cool.
So it has the mast and everything is all in place?
It's
Holy
like,
crap.
There's a picture of it. It's laid.
Why did it sink?
Yeah, I don't know. It was not bombed. The ship is believed to have been a trading vessel of a type that researchers say has only previously been seen on the side of ancient Greek pottery, such as the Siren vase in the British Museum. And they have a picture of the vase here. And it looks exactly like this ship. Like you can sort of see the profile of the ship in the photograph. And then, of course,
The profile of the ship on the vase
is
is the same. That's awesome.
The depiction on the vase is the one where Odysseus is tied to the mast so that it keeps him from like going insane when the sirens are singing.
Okay, yeah. So it's from the Iliad.
Okay, I did not know that. But anyway, it's pretty cool. They're going to leave the hull down there, but they took a small piece of the wood to have it carbon dated by a university. And they basically didn't give an exact date from the carbon dating, but they said it's the oldest shipwreck ever found.
That's really cool.
And this is cool. They
said it was more than 2,400 years old, or something like that.
Well, they're guessing that it's around 2,400 years old.
Okay, but it's still the oldest intact shipwreck ever found.
Yeah,
because I know they found you find pieces of stuff all over the ocean floor that was a shipwreck, but it's
yeah. I mean, it doesn't say that the date 2,400 years came from the carbon dating.
Yeah, I know.
That's why
I heard I was worded. Yeah.
So
okay, so the Watcher says the Black Sea attaches to the Mediterranean via a small channel in Istanbul to Constantinople, because you can't go back to Constantinople because it's Istanbul, not Constantinople.
But this is cool. I didn't know about this. This is a group of archaeologists that they're basically marine archaeologists, and they're doing
maritime. Maritime.
They're doing this project. Let's see where it is here.
They're trying to. You said they were trying to determine. They're trying to figure out what effect global sea changes, sea level changes.
It was among more than 60 shipwrecks found by the International Team of Maritime Archaeologists, Scientists, and Marine Surveyors, which has been on a 3-year mission to explore the depths of the Black Sea to gain a greater understanding of the impact of prehistoric sea level changes.
Wow.
They said the finds varied in age from a 17th century Cossack raiding fleet through Roman trading vessels complete with amphorae. I don't know what that is.
Yeah, amphorae. Those are the jars, the classic Roman and Greek jars.
Oh, the things you make potsherds out of
That's
when
right.
you smash them.
Those were the potsherds.
Okay.
That's right.
To a complete ship from the classical period. So anyway, awesome.
That is cool.
And I'd like to see what...
So the Cossacks were like Russian, or from Russia, or the area of Russia. I'm pretty sure that's what the Cossacks were. So they found a whole fleet, a Cossack raiding fleet that just went down. That's crazy. Like, oh, we're going to go kick somebody
ships.
down.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So I'd like to see what their, the results of their sea level changes study.
Yeah, I'd like to see just a like a point map of where all the wrecks are. That would be cool too, just to look on a map and see where all the wrecks are that they found.
So the acronym is MAP, Maritime Archaeologist Project. Archaeology Project.
That's cool.
Okay, so the other story I have, is, here's the headline: Inside Europe's quest to build an unhackable quantum internet. This is an awesome story, and it gets pretty deep in the weeds, but on quantum stuff. So I'm going to read a couple of things here. Basically, the problem with the internet is that there's all these wires run all over the world. You know, big pipelines going down laid down on the bottom of the ocean, and you know, they're going through cities, and anywhere you could just like tap into it, you can connect in. You can basically record the data that's passing by.
Yeah.
And thus,
and no one would know.
Yeah, no one would even know that you're doing it. So they're planning to do this quantum internet thing, and there's already some quantum stuff being used for this type of stuff. But let's see, I'm gonna read a couple of parts here. I'm gonna find them. Okay, so the laws of quantum physics, on the other hand, allow a particle, for example, an atom, an electron, or for transmitting along optical cables, a photon of light, to occupy a quantum state that represents a combination of 1 and 0 simultaneously, as opposed to just either, you know, one or the other.
Yeah, so like, it's a superposition.
Yeah, a superposition of 1 and 0.
Yeah.
Such a particle is called a quantum bit, or a qubit. When you try to observe a qubit, its state collapses to either 1 or 0. This explain or this.
And that's qubit as in the letter Q B-I-T as opposed to C-U-B-I-T of the ancient measurement system.
It's Q-U-B-I-T.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
As opposed to like the royal qubit that they used to build the pyramids.
Yeah.
Unless they were actually doing quantum.
They're making a joke. This means that if a hacker taps into a stream of qubits, the intruder both destroys the quantum information in that stream and leaves a clear signal that it's been tampered with. Because of this property, qubits have been used for quite some time to generate encryption keys in a process known as quantum key distribution. This involves sending data in classical form over a network, while the keys needed to decrypt the data are transmitted separately in a quantum state. So, however, the approach has limitations. Photons can be absorbed in the atmosphere or by materials in cables, which means they can typically travel for no more than a few tens of kilometers. The Beijing-Shanghai network gets around this by having 32 so-called trusted nodes at various points along it, similar to repeaters that amplify the signal in an ordinary data cable. At these nodes, keys are decrypted into a classical form and then re-encrypted in a fresh quantum state for their journey to the next node. But this means trusted nodes really shouldn't be trusted. A hacker who breaches their security could copy the classical keys undetected, as could a company or government running the nodes.
Yeah.
So they came up with a way to, or one of their plans to overcome this problem is by using quantum teleportation.
Right. It's teleportation of data using entanglement.
Yeah, this may sound like science fiction, but it's an actual method of transmitting data. It relies on a phenomenon known as quantum entanglement. Entanglement means creating a pair of qubits, photons of light for this purpose, in a single quantum state, so that even if they travel off in opposite directions, they retain a quantum connection. Changing the state of one photon will instantaneously change the state of the other one in a predictable way, no matter how far apart they are. Albert Einstein called this spooky action at a distance.
Yeah. Spooky.
Yeah. Quantum teleportation then requires first sending a pair of entangled photons to two people. Call them Alice and Bob.
And Bob.
Alice receives
it's a
her
little Men in Black lingo there.
Yeah. Alice receives her entangled photon and lets it interact with a memory qubit that holds the data she wants to transmit to Bob. This interaction changes the state of her photon and thus changes the state of Bob's photon too. In effect, this teleports the data in Alice's memory qubit from Alice's photon to Bob's. So they have a little illustration depicting it, but you can check this. It's a great story, and I think it's a great idea. This is MIT Technology Review.
Oh, yeah, cool.
Technologyreview.com. So
I just think it's funny they're calling them qubits.
Yeah.
Fayyima. You should build a Vara and make it 300 qubits by 40 qubits by 80 qubits.
That's not very much data.
What's a qubit, oh Lord? Well, it's a quantum teleportation bit. What?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. The whole idea of teleportation of information is a fascinating concept. Like, you always see in science fiction and various, Star Trek or whatever, they're teleporting material, but the idea of teleporting data instantaneously from one spot to another without any kind of, like what Einstein said, a spooky action at a distance, that this data gets from point A to point B without passing through anything.
Yeah, the weird thing is
it's
that
intrinsic.
That's happening all over the universe. Like,
yeah.
If you, like, basically, when you look at a galaxy, all of the bodies in that galaxy are transmitting all of their data to everybody else in the galaxy instantaneously, pretty much. Like,
yeah, because entanglement, the idea of entanglement, if the idea of the Big Bang is correct, then every particle in the universe is entangled because it used to be in the
singularity,
in the super singularity of the Big Bang. Yeah.
Yeah. So that, like, again, like, this is going off a little bit, but I've been listening to Jano Cook.
Yeah.
I don't really know how to pronounce it. So the book
Jano.
What's up, Jano? We had
Mr. Cook.
Someone, I can't remember. Aaron.
Yeah.
Yeah. Gave us a
recommendation
for this book. So I got it. I'm on chapter 4. It's a large book. I think it's his entire website or something. Put in a PDF document. Pretty cool, but I don't know where I was going with that. Oh yeah, this idea that, like, how these forces in the universe are able to interact or travel as they do. In other words, like, like these problems with dark matter and all this kind of stuff. Like,
right.
How are all the bodies? How does this planet know what the sun wants us to do? Right?
Yeah. Like the problem with gravity and how it travels instantaneously. Basically. Yeah.
Like, that's instantaneous, and that's communicating a lot of data.
Yes, it is. Yeah,
to the Earth. Right. Now.
Right. I mean, like when they're looking at these distant bodies and they know that this galaxy is 100 million light years away from this other thing, and yet they're interacting as though the data is transferring instantaneously.
Right.
That's right. Right. The interactions that we observe are concurrent with the positions that they're in, even though the information going from one to the other should be 100 million years out of date, and it's not.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so I agree that there is some kind of quantum teleportation of information happening there.
See, that's why it makes me think that it's resonance, like that the entire universe is in this resonant state where
But don't resonant waves still have to move? They have to travel, right? This is why I've always thought of we used to talk about this back in the teens.
In a standing wave setup, like we were experimenting with cymatics.
Yeah,
like anywhere on the resonant plate, the Chladni plate or whatever, if you disturb this one standing wave over here, it's going to, like, pretty instantaneously change the whole pattern on the plate.
Oh, okay. Is it instantaneous?
I don't know. I mean, probably not on the Chladni plate, but in the ether is what I'm thinking.
Okay,
like,
yeah.
Like, in other words, all the way across the universe, something changes, like from say.
And it shifts the entire pattern, is what you're saying.
Exactly. The pattern shifts over the whole universe.
Yeah.
Faster than the speed of light can travel there.
I think it's also...
I'm not necessarily saying it's instantaneous, but it's a lot faster than the speed of light because it's not actually a thing traveling.
Right.
It's the whole... Like, if you look at it as one vibration and then you change an aspect of it, it's just like quantum entanglement in that, like, when you change this wave over here, this standing wave from, say, the positive to the negative, the other one shifts
accordingly. Yeah, I would be interested to find out what the propagation, if there is a propagation time of that kind of thing. That's an interesting thing to look at.
Yeah.
But I also think the other thing I was going to say is, like, we used to talk about this back in the, like, in the like when we were still the episode numbers, like in the teens. We had a couple of shows where I was trying to get across the idea that there's a lot of information that points to our whole universe actually being comprised completely of information only.
Yeah.
Right? And that's what I'm saying. So, like, we see this information teleportation, and that is another little piece of that evidence that makes me think that we live in a universe that actually is comprised of pure information.
Yeah. I don't think I've ever fully understood that concept as
I don't
I feel
either.
like you do.
I don't understand it.
Whenever
fully
you
either.
talk about it, I'm like, he's getting something that I'm not.
Well, like we talked about, we have these numbers. I don't want to rehash the whole thing, but we have these numbers that basically inform the entire universe.
Yeah.
How is that possible? How is it possible that these like extremely precise numbers, and there's a whole list of them, inform everything in the universe uniformly, as far as we can tell, all the way across it?
Yeah.
How is
really
that
strange.
possible? It implies that there is that at least in some way our universe is based on pure information. That pure information in the sense that it's a string of data as opposed to actual material, except that we interact with it in a sense that we perceive it as material, but really it's not. Like the whole trope of like we're actually mostly made up of nothing.
Yeah.
Like all of our atoms are actually extremely far apart from each other, and the subatomic particles in those atoms are extremely far apart from each other. The whole the whole mind picture of like if you had a dinner plate and that was the nucleus of an atom, then an electron would be a pea a mile away from it, the very first one. Like that we're mostly empty space. Right. And then we've talked about how these particles are actually not particles, but they're like tiny standing wave forms in something.
Yeah.
Right. That implies that it's actually just information, even if
Yeah,
the information is contained in the wave sets that you're talking about. Right. So imagine the entire universe as a big Chladni plate. But there is no material. It's just the waves, the compressions and rarefactions of the wave itself in whatever the medium is. So the universe is actually just data contained in a set of standing waves within this medium.
Yeah. Okay.
Bam!
I get it. I wanted to point something else out too about this idea of faster than light travel or whatever, for example.
Yeah.
So imagine you have a
FTL for those of you who science fiction.
A physicist could probably maybe show up here and just like kick my ass. But I'm just going to say, let's say we have a rod made of pure diamond, right?
Oh yeah, I know this.
A single crystal.
Yeah.
And the rod is however many feet long, whatever. Let's say it's 6 feet long.
Yeah.
And you put your thumb on one end of the rod and you push it. How fast does the other end of the rod move compared to when? Okay, so the moment the rod at the end of your thumb began to move,
is there a compression wave that goes through it, or does it actually move instantaneously? I understand what you're saying with that.
Right,
yeah.
or faster than does the other end begin to move at
instantaneously,
or even,
almost
or faster than the speed of light? In other words, right? Like in other words, I'm pushing on this atom, and once that atom begins to move, it just immediately is already up against the next atom and the next atom and the next atom and the next atom. So I can actually move that atom at the far end of the rod faster than the speed of light. I'm not saying that it's moving faster than light, but the transmission of the information from the first atom that I'm touching saying move is getting to the other end faster than the speed of light. Right. So it's displacement. Yeah. Like the displacement is faster than the speed of light. So it would be the same in the
So the question I have is like, so if we do the same thing, but let's say it's a big rod of steel and I tap on one end with a hammer. Yeah. There is a propagation of time for the sound to get to the other end, and we can test that. So is that the same as pushing it? That the propagation of that wave for the sound to reach the other end of the rod, is that the same as just pushing it? Is there a similar? You see what I'm saying?
Right.
Since we know that the speed of the sound,
the speed of the vibration
moving through it, is it the same as when you push it? Does that actually have to travel to the other end? But this is what I would say. I would say that you're right in the sense that I think that the medium, whatever this medium is that has all these waves in it, is the fundamental crystalline structure of the universe.
That's what I'm talking about.
And that all other crystals that we know of are following some kind of pattern that is contained within this thing. Right. And that's why they exhibit these strange, interesting properties like piezoelectricity and so on and so forth.
And that they can propagate
vibrations. They can propagate vibrations extremely
They're conductive
quickly.
Or whatever.
Yeah. Exactly.
All right, so now that we got that figured out.
Next mystery.
I don't actually know the answer to that question, but it is, I wonder about that. Like, it seems to me that it would be strange if it didn't move, if the other end didn't move faster
Yeah.
than the speed of light, but I
Yeah.
don't know. Because, of course, you could argue that the longer or the bigger that you make it,
I guess
the more it can flex.
Is a like tapping on one end and sending a wave through it different than pushing on it? Is that because maybe it is? It could be completely different. But like, let's say that you had this rod of diamond that you're talking about, but it's a light year long. It's a light year long, and if I tap on one end, that sound that
the
sound
actual
wave,
mechanical vibration.
yeah, to move through that crystalline structure is going to take a certain amount of time. We know it's
Right.
not instantaneous. It
Right.
may be faster than light. I don't know. But if I push it, does it have to also is
the
that a
same
wave
thing.
that moves through the entire thing in the same way? I don't know. That's a very interesting question. Because a wave actually
I don't think it is the same thing because
a wave, you're right, because a wave doesn't move the material. It's just a compression and rarefaction.
right,
Yeah. Because like the ocean doesn't move when it's got waves going through it.
right.
But if I was on the other side of the ocean and it was a solid thing, if I pushed it,
But hydraulics, like when you have a hydraulic cylinder,
Yeah, yeah.
and you push on one end of the cylinder, the other end moves out.
Right.
But that's not
is
what's
it
happening
instantaneously?
That's not what happening. That's not what's happening if you have a transverse wave on the surface of water.
Right.
Hydraulic fluid.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
But there's still a wave going through the fluid itself, right? I don't know.
we're reading The Watcher and trying to figure out
I don't
what he's
understand the
talking about.
question.
Okay. Anyway, these questions for another day.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have to look into that. But yeah, I guess part of that would be, inertia is part of that. Like once you, like the longer the rod, the more mass the entire structure has.
Yeah.
And thus the harder, the more energy you have to put into the pushing force to get it to move.
Right.
And that is already a function of the entire, like the whole thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, if you had a diamond rod a light year long, you would probably just end up smeared onto it in a little thin layer all the way across the entire thing. Because it would have it would have its own gravity well. So, yeah, those are all very interesting questions. And the whole quantum thing, I think that the quantum, the fact that the fundamental building blocks of the universe also seem to act on these quantum principles that seem to be information based is another clue that the universe in some way is pure information.
Well, also, when you think about quantum entanglement, then this was the reason why I brought this up anyway, that you can have two particles that are entangled so that when you change this one, the other one changes.
Yeah.
Is a clue that this is exactly how the universe is constructed.
Right.
That in other words, like when you, whatever they have to do to
That
create
the space doesn't matter.
right, whatever they have to do to create these two entangled particles, doesn't matter where they move them. As they move them through the universe, the information of their position in the universe is being recorded by the ether,
Yeah.
by the medium, so that when one is moving, the other one, it's their information. In other words, their locations in space
are irrelevant.
Well, it's not
It's
that
the
it's
state of the particles itself that are entangled. That's what they say. You can move them wherever you want.
I know, but my point is that another way to look at it is that the resonant medium of the universe itself is
It is aware of where they are.
the information that's in those entangled particles.
Okay,
so that,
yeah.
So that when one changes, the other one changes, indicating that it is part of that standing wave structure.
Yeah, I got you.
Right? Like they are, like you have to create them in a certain way.
Yeah.
And then they are, wherever they go in the universe, they are in other words,
They're connected by information. Despite
by that resonant pattern in the universe.
Yeah. Okay. I can see that. I always thought of it as like that their location becomes irrelevant in terms of their state.
Yeah,
But that's a
true.
more abstract way of looking at it. What you're talking about is you're given an idea of how this actually may function
Yeah,
physically.
that's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah. Fucking materialist.
Yeah. Hey, I'm not saying that the medium is material.
Yeah.
It might be consciousness. I don't know. What is consciousness?
Stop
made of?
trying to explain my ghost with quantum physics. We are going to take a quick break, and when we come back...
Damn, we're already done?
Yeah, it's fastest 2 hours of podcasting. So we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we will begin the journey down the rabbit hole of the fairy faith in Celtic countries.
Constantly shedding our skins as new information blows our minds. Brothers of the Serpent podcast returns for the Fae folk.
But first, we want to talk about this. We're doing this mind experiment with an impossible object during the break, right?
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah. So if you had a perfectly rigid rod that was a light year long, and you're holding it in your hand, and it was going out into space for a light year, and you swung it down like a sword, it would take a year if the rod itself moved instantaneously all along its length. It would take a year for the light from the far end to reach your eyes, so it would look like a giant curve no matter what.
Yeah.
So it'd be difficult to tell what the actual rod was doing without observers all along its length, and even then, their information wouldn't get to you unless you're using like quantum teleportation, you know.
Right. If you knew exactly that it was exactly a light year long, then you could basically watch the end of it for a year, and if it moved exactly 1 year later,
you would know that the whole thing moved instantaneously,
right?
And that the information of your hand on one end was transferred instantaneously to the other end, even though the light information of itself did not get to you for a year.
And this is what the Watcher was trying to this was basically the question that the Watcher had that we didn't understand.
Yeah. Well, I think the other question he was asking is if you had some object like that, and when you swung it down, if you moved your hand at light speed, would the leverage, the length of the thing, make the far end of it actually move faster than the speed of light? Or would that make it curve? Because it couldn't.
Oh, that's
See,
a good question,
if the far end was reaching relativistic speeds, what would happen to that part of the object? You know, so if you were able to swing downwards at the speed of light at one end, the leverage would make the other end try to approach.
Right.
And so it should be, if the standard model is correct, you should not be able to do it because the inertia of the far end would become so great that you couldn't move it that fast.
Right.
Because
you wouldn't even have to move your arm down at light speed. You could just do a fraction of light speed, but the curve could make the other end
the leverage
somewhere in the middle. It would be light speed, and at the end it would be faster than light
and
speed.
that should be, according to the standard model, impossible because the inertia would be too high, supposing that you had the muscle strength to move the thing in the first place in a place where you're floating in space anyway.
Right.
If you grabbed this thing and tried to swing it, you would just go flying off. It wouldn't move.
But that's not the point. The interesting point is that no matter what you do, like with this perfectly rigid rod, you swing it down, it's going to look like it's curving. If you're
no matter what,
yeah, because the light, the light that's reflecting off the rod further and further away is taking longer and longer to get to you. So it's motion.
So as you swung it down, you would actually see a wave of movement go out along the length of the rod towards the far end, and it would take a year for the wave of movement to reach the far end for that to move. So it would look like a giant curve. It would turn it into a scimitar no matter what you did.
So then we were thinking about the experiment where they basically proved Einstein's theory of relativity, or the bending of space-time, the curvature of space-time.
Yeah, with gravitic lensing.
When they looked at when there was a solar eclipse, and they looked at the edge of the corona or whatever, and they saw light from a star that was actually behind the sun, proving that it was actually bending the light around. How do they know that light wasn't there? Like, okay, the position of the star is the same problem. Like, where the position,
that star isn't actually there.
Right. The light from that star is not actually where that star is anymore.
Right.
Because it's many, many light years away.
Right. So all along the length of the light of that star coming towards us is a giant curve in the first place.
Right.
Yeah.
Every star in the sky that we're seeing right now, there's actually a giant curve of
Right.
the light.
Yeah, if you follow the light outwards towards that star, you would have to curve in the direction that the star is actually moving because it's not actually where we're seeing it. Yeah.
Which is very hard to...
Space is weird.
Yeah. All right.
Okay, so I want to kick this off basically with some explanation. What I've done, I've been going through this book and I've been basically just marking off this story, because what this guy did, and this was in the 1900s, like as in before World War II. He went traveling through what he called the Celtic countries, so England, Wales, Scotland, Ireland. He went walking through these countries in the countryside, meeting people, finding out who knew all the fairy stories from various people, and then going to their houses or going to where they were at the pubs, sitting down with them and listening to their stories and recording them. Okay. That's what he did. And so I've gone through and basically marked off and highlighted the stories that I want to tell. And I just want to explain that he does, in the text of the story, explain to you why this person is reliable, how he was like basically recommended by everybody. You know, a lot of times he'll go talk to the reverend of the local church and find out who the oldest residents are, who's reliable and who's not, and whose word everybody believes, and then go speak to that person. So that's his way of verifying that these aren't people who are just making things up.
Yeah.
That they're telling stories that they heard from their ancestors, or that. So as you listen to this, keep in mind that he references it in that way. Now, all of this obviously is anecdotal in the sense that he's sitting down with an old person and saying, my grandfather's grandfather said blah, 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 right? But the idea is that he, to the best of his ability, and this is anthropology all the way, it's anthropological in the sense that this is how you verify the stories. It comes down to, do all the people that know this person think that they're trustworthy? Okay. Yeah. And that's the best you can do. And he has done that like to a fault in this book. So I'm not going to read any of that stuff, but he does explain to you in the book how he has verified that this person is trustworthy and so on and so forth. Okay.
Cool.
So I'm just going to start going through some of these. Now, keep in mind that what we're looking at here is across all these different countries, and he's just getting the stories straight from these people. And so they're different, but you begin to see a pattern. Okay. So the first one I've marked here is, a learned priest of the Roman Church told me when I met him in Galway, and also forgive me for butchering many of the names because I don't know how to say them. I know that they're not said how they are spelled often, but I don't know how to say them. Okay, Galway, that in his opinion, those places in Ireland where ancient sacrifices were performed to pagan or druid gods are still, unless they have been regularly exorcised, under the control of demons. And what the Druids were at Tara and throughout Erin, and most probably at Karnak as well, the priests were in Egypt, and the Pythonesses in Greece. That is to say, Druids, Egyptian priests, priestesses in charge of Greek oracles are said to have foretold the future, interpreted omens, worked miracles and wonders of magic by the aid of demons, or daemons, who were regarded as an order of invisible beings, intermediary between the gods and men, and as sometimes including the shades from Hades. Okay. Let's see. So that was an opinion of a priest that he spoke to. So let's see. And he has his own theories on how all this works. So this is part of it. In most cases, as examination will show, the evidence is so clear that little or no comment is necessary. Most of the evidence also points so much in one direction that the only verdict which seems reasonable is that the fairy faith belongs to a doctrine of souls. That is to say, that fairyland is a state or condition, realm or place, very much like, if not the same as, that wherein civilized and uncivilized men alike place the souls of the dead, in company with other invisible beings such as gods, daemons, and all sorts of good and bad spirits. Not only do both educated and uneducated Celtic seers so conceive fairyland, but they go much further and say that fairyland actually exists as an invisible world within which the visible world is immersed like an island or in an unexplored ocean, and that it is peopled by more species of living beings than this world, because incomparably more vast and varied in its possibilities.
Man.
Okay. So basically,
cool.
that the material realm is a little bitty island inside this much more vast world that we can't see or can only interact with on a very limited level. All right.
Great.
Great.
Sitting here looking out of the universe, having my
No
mind
wonder
blown
we're
every
missing
day.
most of it.
It's like, it's so big. It's a tiny island, folks.
Yeah. In no case has testimony been admitted from a person who was known to be unreliable, nor even from a person who was thought to be unreliable. Accordingly, the evidence we are to examine ought to be considered good evidence so far as it goes, and since it represents almost all known elements of the fairy faith and contains almost all the essential elements upon which the advocates of the naturalistic theory, of the pygmy theory, of the druid theory, and of the mythological theory, as well as our own psychological theory, must base their arguments, we consider it very adequate evidence. Nearly every witness is a Celt who has been made acquainted with the belief in fairies through direct contact with people who believe in them, or through having heard fairy traditions among his own kindred, or through personal psychological experiences. Okay, so I wanted to read that because that's his own explanation of how his information is gotten. Okay. We are now prepared to hear about the Dwan Maith, the good people, as the Irish call their She race. Now, She is interesting. It's spelled S-I-D-H-E, but it's pronounced She. Okay? So when you hear of places like Glenshee in Ireland, it's spelled S-H-E-E now, but Glenshee means the Glen of the Fae. Okay? All right. As the Irish call their She race about the people of peace, the still folk, or the silent moving folk, as the Scotch call their She, who live in green knolls and in mountain fastnesses of the Highlands, about various Manx fairies, about the Tilwith Teg, the fair family or fair folk, as the Welsh people call their fairies, about Cornish pixies, about the Fee or Fae, the Corrigans, the phantoms of the dead in Brittany. And along with these, for they are very much akin, let us hear about ghosts, sometimes about ghosts who discover hidden treasure, as in our story of the golden image, about goblins, about various sorts of death warnings, generally coming from apparitions of the dead, or from banshees, about death candles and phantom funerals, about leprechauns and about hosts of the air, and about all kinds of elementals and spirits. In short, about all the orders of beings who mingle together in that invisible realm called fairyland. Okay, and the other thing you have to remember is, like, get the image of Tinkerbell out of your mind. Like, if a Tinkerbell would be loosely called a pixie, but even pixies were usually really evil in these stories. So Tinkerbell is some kind of weird Disney-ish version of a pixie, but often the fairy were enormous. And like beautiful, enormous, like the men were well muscled and just like gigantic, 8 feet tall and shining with light and covered in Celtic tattoos and looking like they would cut your head off with a broadsword. Like they're not like little buzzing flies, okay? Okay, the problem we have to deal with is a startling one, and thus put before us by Mr. Wentz. Mr. Wentz is the guy who wrote the book. Are these beings of the spirit world real beings, having a veritable existence of their own, in a world of their own, or are they only the creation of the imagination of his informants and the tradition of bygone centuries? The newspaper, the National School, and the Zeitgeist have answered to their own entire satisfaction that these things are imagination pure and simple. Yet this offhand condemnation does not always carry with it a perfect conviction. We do not doubt the existence of tree martins or kingfishers, although 999 people out of every 1,000 pass their entire lives without being vouchsafed a glimpse of them in their live state. And it may not be the same with the creatures of the spirit world. And may it not be the same with the creatures of the spirit world. May not they also exist, although to only 1 in 1,000 to behold them. The spirit creatures cannot be stuffed and put into museums like rare animals and birds, whose existence we might doubt if we had not seen them there. Yet they may exist just as animals and birds do, though we cannot see them. I, at least, have often been tempted to think so. So if you can see that, despite the archaic way of talking, basically what he's saying is we can't stuff these and put them in museums, but only one person out of 1,000 is ever going to see a bobcat or a mountain lion, and yet no one doubts that they exist because we can stuff them and put them in museums.
Yeah.
But if we couldn't, how many people would completely disbelieve that those things exist? We already know about cryptids, animals that no one has managed to stuff and put in a museum yet, and yet we find them every year, right? So just because not everyone gets to see them does not mean they don't exist, right?
But if
absence of evidence is not evidence of absence.
Yeah. If you really want to see one, burn a bush and or something.
burn bush.
Yeah, these are not those kind of fairies.
Yeah. Okay, so here's one of the first stories. It's called "Death Through Cutting Fairy Bushes," and you can actually find information about this today in YouTube videos. There's like whole videos where people have. There's entire like problems where people are like, do not put the highway through this area because that rock or that bush or that tree is where the fae folk live. And if you cut it down or you move that boulder, we're all going to suffer. It's fascinating. So anyway, death through cutting fairy bushes. A man named Cafney cut as fuel to boil his pot of potatoes some of these undisturbed bushes around which the fairies pass. When he put the wood under the pot, though it spat fire and fire sparkles would come out of it, it would not burn. The man pined away gradually. In 6 months after cutting the fairy bushes, he was dead. Just before he died, he told his experiences with the wood to his brother, and his brother told me. Right, so this is the nature of a lot of the stories.
Yeah.
Okay. Next one. How the shoemaker's daughter became the queen of Tara. In olden times, there lived a shoemaker and his wife up near Moat Nof, and their first child was taken by the queen of the fairies who lived inside the moat. And a little leprechaun left in its place. This is called a changeling, where if a baby is not properly protected, the fae will come and take it and leave one of their like children in its place, or one of their old men, actually. Okay. Oh. That's... Should have turned that down. Yeah. Rookie move. Hate to see it happen. Okay, the same exchange was made when the second child was born. At the birth of the third child, the fairy queen came again and ordered one of her 3 servants to take the child. But the child could not be moved because a great beam of iron, too heavy to lift, which lay across the baby's breast. The second servant and then the third failed like the first, and the queen herself could not move the child. The mother, being short of pins, had used a needle to fasten the child's clothes, and that was what appeared to the fairies as a beam of iron, for there was virtue in steel in those days. So there's this weird thing with iron.
Yeah.
Okay. So the fairy queen decided to bestow gifts upon the child and advised each of the 3 servants to give, in turn, a different gift. The first one said, "May she be the grandest lady in the world." The second one said, "May she be the greatest singer in the world." And the third one said, "May she be the best mantle maker in the world," or weaver. Okay. Then the fairy queen said, "Your gifts are all very good, but I will give a gift of my own better than any of them. The first time she happens to go out of the house, let her come back into it under the form of a rat." Like, what kind of gift is that? The mother heard all that the fairy women said, and so she never permitted her daughter to leave the house. When the girl reached the age of 18, it happened that the young prince of Tara, in riding by on a hunt, heard her singing, and so entranced was he with the music that he stopped to listen. And the song ended, he entered the house, and upon seeing the wonderful beauty of the singer, asked her to marry him. The mother said that could not be, and taking the daughter out of the house for the first time, brought her back into it in an apron under the form of a rat, that the prince might understand the refusal. This enchantment, however, did not change the prince's love for the beautiful singer, and he explained how there was a day mentioned with his father, the king, for all the great ladies of Ireland to assemble in the hills of Tara, and that the grandest lady and the greatest singer with the best mantle maker would be chosen as his wife. When he added that each lady must come in a chariot, the rat spoke to him and said that he must send her home on the day named 4 cats and a pack of cards. You see where this is going? This is very Cinderella. Okay, 4 cats and a pack of cards, and that she would make her appearance, provided that at the time her chariot came to the halls of Tara, no one save the prince should be allowed near it. And she finally said to the prince, "Until the day mentioned with your father, you must carry me as a rat in your pocket." But before the great day arrived, the rat had made everything known to one of the fairy women, and so when the 4 cats and the pack of cards reached the girl's house, the fairies at once turned the cats into the 4 most splendid horses in the world, and the pack of cards into the most wonderful chariot in the world. And as the chariot was setting out from the moat for Tara, the fairy queen clapped her hands and laughed, and the enchantment over the girl was broken, so that she became, as before, the prettiest lady in the world, and sitting in the chariot. When the prince saw the wonderful chariot coming, he knew whose it was, and went out alone to meet it, but he could not believe his eyes upon seeing the lady inside. And then she told him about the witches and fairies and explained everything. Hundreds of ladies had come to the halls of Tara from all Ireland, and every one as grand as could be. The contest began with the singing and ended with the mantle making, and the young girl was the last to appear. But to the amazement of all the company, the king had to give in and admit that the strange woman was the grandest lady, the greatest singer, and the best mantle maker in Ireland. And when the old king died, she became queen of Tara.
That is really strange.
Yeah, so lots of elements of that will become more familiar as we go through these stories. That's probably the longest one I'm going to read. Okay. Crossing a stream and fairies. When out on a dark night, if pursued by fairies or ghosts, one is considered quite safe if one can get over some stream of water. I remember coming home on a dark night with a boy companion and hearing a noise, and then after we had run to a stream and crossed it, feeling quite safe. This is also another thing this is interesting to me because of the other things it connects with, like demons crossing water. Mm-hmm. You know, there's something about this that if you can cross water, then they can't get to you. Okay. Those who return from the Fae. Persons in a short trance state of 2 or 3 days' duration are said to be away with the fairies enjoying a festival. The festival may be very material in its nature, or it may be purely spiritual. Sometimes one may thus go to fairy for an hour or two, or one may remain there for 7 or 14 or 21 years. The mind of a person coming out of fairyland is usually a blank as to what has been seen and done there. Another idea is that the person knows well enough all about fairyland, but is prevented from communicating this knowledge. A certain woman of whom I knew said she had forgotten all about her experiences in fairy, but a friend of hers who heard her objected and said she did remember but wouldn't tell. A man may remain awake at night to watch one who has been to fairyland to see if that one holds communications with the fairies, and others say that in such a case the fairies know you are on the alert and will not be discovered. And so keep in mind, these are just, what I'm reading are what people are telling this guy.
Yeah.
Every single one of these is a different person telling different stories that they've come across. Okay. In the South Island, as night was coming on, a man was giving his cow water at a well, and as he looked on the other side of a wall, he saw many strange people playing hurley. When they noticed him looking at them, one came up and struck the cow a hard blow, and turning on the man, cut his face and body very badly. The man might not have been so badly off, but he returned to the well after the first encounter and got 5 times as bad of a beating. And when he reached home, he couldn't speak at all until the cock crowed. Then he told about his adventures and slept a little, and when he woke up in the daylight, he was none the worse for his beating, for the fairies had rubbed something on his face. And the person, it says that they knew the man, who is, if he is still alive, is now in America, where he went several years ago. So that would have been back in the 1900s. So I'm like, as you're hearing these stories, think of like the 411 stuff and just various other like strange things that happen to people in the woods. Basically, is what I'm getting at here. Okay, this is weird. The famine of 1846 to 1847 was blamed on the fairies. The potato famine that killed all these people and sent a whole bunch of people to the United States. During 1846, the potato crop in Ireland was a failure, and very much suffering resulted. At the time, the country people in these parts attributed the famine to disturbed conditions in the fairy world. Old Thaddy Steed told me about the conditions then prevailing and said, "Sure, we couldn't be any other way. And I saw the good people, and hundreds besides me saw them fighting in the sky over Knockma and on towards Galway. And I heard others say that they saw the fighting also." So these people are claiming that they saw war in the sky, and they blamed this on the famine.
Yeah. They blamed the war in the sky on the famine.
Or I'm sorry, they blamed the famine on the war in the sky. That the conditions in fairyland caused the potato famine. That the fairies were having this gigantic war, and for some reason that caused the famine.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
I thought they had a potato famine and the fairies got mad and they had a massive war because they had no potatoes.
They got no potatoes. It's the other way around.
Okay.
They blamed the potato famine on the fact that in fairyland there was this huge uproar of wars or whatever. Okay. The Ben Bulben country in County Sligo is one of the rare places in Ireland where fairies are thought to be visible. And our first witness from there claims to be able to see the fairies, or Gentry, they call them the Gentry, and to talk with them. This mortal, so favored, lives in the same townland where his fathers have lived during 400 years, directly beneath the shadows of Ben Bulben, on whose sides Dermot is said to have been killed while hunting the wild boar. In this famous old mountain, honeycombed with curious grottos ages ago when the sea beat against its perpendicular flanks, is the very place where the Gentry have their chief abode. Even on its broad level summit, for it is a high square tableland like a mighty cube of rock set down upon the earth by some antediluvian god, there are treacherous holes, wherein more than one hunter may have been lost forever, penetrating to unknown depths. And by listening, one can hear the tides from the ocean 3 or 4 miles away, surging in and out through ancient subterranean channels connected with these holes. In the neighboring mountains there are long caverns which no man has dared to penetrate to the end, and even dogs, it is said, have been put in them never to emerge, or else to come out miles away. I just wanted to read that part about the caves. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Like you can like listen at these holes and hear the ocean surging in and out of it, like even though it's miles and miles and miles off.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Okay. Encounters with the Gentry. When I was a young man, I often used to go out into the mountains over there, and he pointed out of a window in the direction, to fish for trout or to hunt. And it was in January on a cold and dry day while carrying my gun that I and a friend with me, as we were walking around Ben Bulben, saw one of the Gentry for the first time. I knew who it was, for I had heard the Gentry described ever since I could remember, and this one was dressed in blue with a headdress adorned with what seemed to be frills. And when he came up to us, he said to me in a sweet and silvery voice, "The seldomer you come to this mountain, the better. A young lady here wants to take you away." Then he told us not to fire off our guns because the Gentry dislike being disturbed by the noise. And he seemed to be like a soldier of the Gentry on guard. As we were leaving the mountains, he told us not to look back, and we didn't. Another time I was alone trout fishing in nearly the same region when I heard a voice say, "It is, barefooted and fishing." Then there came a whistle-like music and a noise of the beating of a drum, and soon one of the Gentry came and talked to me for half an hour. He said, "Your mother will die in 11 months, and do not let her die unanointed." And she did die within 11 months. As he was going away, he warned me, "You must be in the house before sunset. Do not delay. Do not delay. They can do nothing to you until I get back in the castle." As I found out afterwards, he was going to take me, but hesitated because he did not want to leave my mother alone. After these warnings, I was always afraid to go to the mountains, but lately I have been told I could go if I took a friend with me.
That's so strange.
Isn't that strange? Okay, the Gentry described. So he says, in response to my wish, this description of the Gentry was given. "The folk are the grandest I have ever seen. They are far superior to us, and that is why they are called the Gentry. They are not a working class, but a military aristocratic class, tall and noble appearing. They are a distinct race between our own and that of spirits, as they have told me. Their qualifications are tremendous. Quote, we could cut off half the human race, but we would not, for we are expecting salvation. And I knew a man 3 or 4 years ago whom they struck down with paralysis. Their sight is so penetrating that I think they can see through the earth. They have a silvery voice, quick and sweet. The music they play is most beautiful. They take the whole body and soul of young and intellectual people who are interesting, transmuting the body to a body like their own. I asked them once if they ever died, and they said, no, we are always kept young. Once they take you and you taste food in their palace, you cannot come back. You are changed into one of them and live with them forever. They are able to appear in different forms. One once appeared to me and seemed only 4 feet high and stoutly built. He said, I am bigger than I appear to you now. We can make the old young, the big small, and the small big. One of their women told all the secrets of my family. She said that my brother in Australia would travel much and suffer hardships, all of which came true, and foretold that my nephew, then about 2 years old, would become a great clergyman in America, and that is what he is now. Besides the Gentry, who are a distinct class, there are bad spirits and ghosts which are nothing like them. My mother once saw a leprechaun beside a bush. He disappeared before she could get to him, but he also was unlike one of the Gentry. Is this interesting to you at all?
Yeah.
Okay. The Invisible Island. Okay. There is an enchanted island which is invisible between Inishmurray and the mainland opposite. It is only seen once in 7 years. I saw it myself, so did 4 or 5 others with me. A boatman from Sligo named Carr took 2 strange men with him towards Inishmurray, and they disappeared at the spot where the island is, and he thought they had fallen overboard and been drowned. Carr saw one of the same men in Connolly some 6 months or so after, and with great surprise he said to him, Will you tell me the wonders of the world? Is it you I saw drowned near Inishmurray? Yes, he said, and then he asked, Do you see me? Yes, answered Carr. But, said the man again, do you not see me with both eyes? Then Carr closed one eye to be sure, and found that he saw him with one eye only. As he told the man which one it was, at this information the ferryman blew on Carr's face, and Carr never saw him again.
That's crazy. I'm just reminded of all these weird superstitions that,
Yeah.
like Ty was asking us to look up superstitions, and I read a whole bunch of them, and like a lot of these things that they
Yeah.
say
I
remind
agree.
me of those.
Yeah, there's a lot of
little
stuff mixed in.
practices, you know.
Yeah.
Don't do this, don't do that.
Yeah.
Do this when this happens. Do that when this happens.
Right.
It's all like
Yeah.
the rule book of the Fae folk.
That's right. Okay, so this is an interesting one. A Druid Enchantment. There followed the most weird legend I have ever heard in Celtic lands about druids and magic. One afternoon, Patrick Waters pointed out to me the field near the seacoast opposite Inishmare, in which the ancient menhir containing the enchantment used to stand, and at another time he said that a bronze wand covered with curious marks or interlaced designs was found not far from the ruined dolmen on the farm of Patrick Bruan about 2 miles southward. This last statement, like the story itself, I have been unable to verify in any way. So here's the story. In times before Christ, there were druids here who enchanted one another with druid rods made of brass and metamorphosed one another into stone and lumps of oak. The question is, where are the spirits of these druids now? Their spirits are wafted through the air, and the man or beast they meet is smitten, while their own bodies are still under enchantment. I had such a druid enchantment in my hand. It wasn't stone, nor marble, nor flint, and it had a human shape. It was found in the center of a big rock, and round this rock light used to appear at night. The man who owned the stone decided to blast it, and he found at its center the enchantment, just like a man with a head and legs and arms. Father Healy took the enchantment away while he was here on visit and said that it was a druid enchanted, and that to get out of the rock was one part of the releasement, and that there would be a second and complete releasement of the druid. Isn't that weird?
Crazy, dude.
Yeah. That there was this giant standing stone, and the dude, it used to glow at night, and the dude blasted it open and found this like weird,
little
not
figurine.
stone, figurine encased in it, and that the priest claimed that it was the druid himself that was enchanted.
And he
in there.
knew how to make him.
Yeah, took him and
bring
hid him
back,
away
yeah.
so that he wouldn't become alive again.
Oh,
'Cause
really?
they're pagan, yeah, according to the priest, this church guy. Okay, the fairy tribes classified. Finally, I asked Patrick to classify, as far as he could, all the fairy tribes he had ever heard about, and he said, the Leprechaun is a red-capped fellow who stays around Pure Springs, generally shoemaking for the rest of the fairy tribes. The Lunatishis are the tribes that guard the blackthorn trees or sloes, and they let you cut no stick on the 11th of November, which is the original November day, or the 11th of May, which is the original May day. If at such a time you cut a blackthorn, some misfortune will come to you. Pukas are black-featured fellows mounted on good horses and are horse dealers. They visit race courses but are usually invisible. The Gentry are the most noble tribe of all, and they are a big race who come from the planets. According to my idea, they usually appear white or shining light. The Dwan Maith, though there is some doubt, the same or almost the same as the Gentry, were next to heaven at the fall, but did not fall. They are a people expecting salvation. So, okay, go ahead.
The 11th. I'm wondering about procession. Like you're saying, the 11th used to be the original day.
Yeah, the original May Day.
Is that the way it would go? Like forward, like
What do you mean?
like in terms of procession? Because if you follow the seasons as your calendar,
Yeah.
and then after many years pass,
Oh,
due
yeah,
to procession,
you mean with the day drift?
yes,
Yeah, I think it would, yeah.
Does it go forward or backwards?
It would go backwards along the calendar, right?
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
So, that's
What's
weird.
May Day now?
Well, I mean, he's saying that the 11th used to be that day.
Right, with the 1st of May. It's the 11th, and now it's the 1st, I think is the idea. I don't know when May Day is supposed to be. Is it the 5th?
I don't know.
But it seems to have gone backwards. It's not further forward in the calendar.
Yeah, it's hard for me to picture it. It's like it's the same problem with changing the hour forward or back.
Oh yeah. Does the pointer drift backwards along the calendar from the 11th of May to the 10th to the 9th to the 8th to the 7th to the 6th?
Yeah, because we have these things like mayflies and June bugs.
Yeah.
But they come a month out of place.
Yeah.
Because probably due to procession.
Right. They're no longer in June or in May. Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. All right, we're going to take another quick break. And when we come back, I will continue to read these very strange stories about the fairy faith.